Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ramo, Hare Ramo, Rama Ramo, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ramo, Hare Ramo, Ram Ramo, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ramo, Hare Ramo, Ram Ramo, Hare Hare. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajacharya Ashwata Saraswati Srimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Anantakori Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridasta Ki Jai Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. All glorious to the assembled devotees, all glorious to the assembled devotees, all glorious to the assembled devotees, all glorious to Sri Guru and Gauranga. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Ato Bhajyashe Samena Sadvim. Ato Bhajyashe Samayena Sadvim. Jhavate jo bibriyad atmano me. Jhavate jo bibriyad atmano me. Ato daman paramahamsha mukyan. Ato daman paramahamsha mukyan. Shukla proktan bahumanye bibhishram. Shukla proktan bahumanye bihimrishan. Ato bhajyashe samena shadvim. Yavate jo bibriyad atmano me. Ato daman paramahamcha mukyan. Sukla proktan bahumanye vihimran. Ato bhajyashe samayena shadvim. Jhavate jo bibriyad atmano me. Ato daman paramahamsa mukyan. Sukla proktan bahumanye vihimsran. Ato bhajyashe samayena shadvim. Jhavate jo bibriyad atmano me. Ato dharman paramahamsa mukyan. Sukla proktan bahumanye vihimsran. Ataha, therefore, bhajyashe, I shall accept, samayena, on the conditions, shadvim, the chaste girl, yavat, until, tejaha, semen, bhrabhyat, may bear, atmanaha, from my body, may my, ataha, thereafter, dharman, the duties, paramahamsa mukyan, of the best of the Paramahamsas, Sukla Proktan, spoken by Lord Vishnu, Bahu, much, Manye, I shall consider, Avihimrishan, free from envy. Translation by His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada. Therefore, I shall accept this chaste girl as my wife, on the condition that after she bears semen from my body, I shall accept the life of devotional service accepted by the most perfect human beings. That process was described by Lord Vishnu. It is free from envy. Translation responsively. Therefore, I shall accept this chaste girl as my wife, on the condition that after she bears semen from my body, I shall accept the life of devotional service, accepted by the most perfect human beings. That process was described by Lord Vishnu. It is free from envy. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Kadama Muni expressed his desire for a very beautiful wife to Empress Swayambhuva and accepted the Emperor's daughter for marriage. Kadama Muni was in the hermitage practicing complete celibacy as a brahmachari, and although he had the desire to marry, he did not want to be a householder for the whole span of his life, because he was conversant with the Vedic principles of human life. According to Vedic principles, the first part of human life should be utilized in brahmacharya for the development of character and spiritual qualities. In the next part of life, one may accept a wife and beget children, but one should not beget children like cats and dogs. Kadama Muni desired to beget a child who would be a ray of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. One should beget a child who can perform the duties of Vishnu. Otherwise, there is no need to produce children. There are two kinds of children born of good fathers. One is educated in Krishna consciousness, so that he can be delivered from the clutches of Maya in that very life. And the other is a ray of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and teaches the world the ultimate goal of life. As will be described in later chapters, Kadama Muni begot such a child, Kapila, the incarnation of the Personality of Godhead, who enunciated the philosophy of Sankhya. Great householders pray to God to send his representative so that there may be an auspicious movement in human society. This is one reason to beget a child. Another reason is that a highly enlightened parent can train a child in Krishna consciousness so that the child will not have to come back again to this miserable world. Parents should see to it that the child born of them does not enter the womb of a mother again. Unless one can train a child for liberation in that life, there is no need to marry or produce children. If human society produces children like cats and dogs for the disturbance of social order, then the world becomes hellish, as it has in this age of Kali. In this age, neither parents nor their children are trained. Both are animalistic and simply eat, sleep, mate, defend, and gratify their senses. This disorder in social life cannot bring peace to human society. Kadama Muni explains beforehand that he would not associate with the girl Devahuti for the whole duration of his life. He would simply associate with her until she had a child. In other words, sex life should be utilized only to produce a nice child, not for any other purpose. Human life is especially meant for complete devotion to the service of the Lord. That is the philosophy of Lord Chaitanya. After fulfilling his responsibility to produce a nice child, one should take sannyas and engage in the perfectional Paramahamsa stage. Paramahamsa refers to the most highly elevated perfectional stage of life. There are 4 stages within sannyas life, and Paramahamsa is the highest order. The Srimad Bhagavatam is called the Paramahamsa Samhita, the treatise for the highest class of human beings. The Paramahamsa is free from envy. In other stages, even in household life, there is competition and envy. But since the activities of the human being in the Paramahamsa stage are completely engaged in Krishna consciousness or devotional service, there is no scope for envy. In the same order as Kadama Muni, about 100 years ago, Thakur Bhakti Vinod also wanted to beget a child who could preach the philosophy and teachings of Lord Chaitanya to the fullest extent. By his prayers to the Lord, he had as his child Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj, who at the present moment is preaching the philosophy of Lord Chaitanya throughout the entire world through his bona fide disciples. Om Gnat Nanjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Jena Tajmai Shri Gurave Namaha Panchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhuvayevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. So when I first read this verse, I was thinking it's so elevated. Where do we fit in? This is the highest platform that Prabhupada's putting forward here. Even when he talks about sannyas as the highest order of life, he only talks about the Paramahamsa stage. So the whole verse, really, Prabhupada's putting forward the highest standard for human beings. This verse is giving us the ultimate goal. So I was thinking, we may not have reached that goal yet, and sometimes so these instructions can seem a bit difficult, even maybe beyond us. Also, we should remember that these pastimes were happening in such a yuga, not in Kali Yuga. The personalities who are involved, the other day Mukunda Maharaj was pointing out in class, that these are exalted beings, Kadama Muni and Devahuti. Kadama Muni is performing his meditation and Lord Vishnu just appears before him. It's pretty special. And Devahuti is described, apart from being extremely beautiful, her father is the ruler of the entire planet. She goes from that to living with an ascetic and serving him, sort of living in rags practically, without a moment's glance. I mean, who can do that? From being a princess to an ascetic. But the Bhagavatam in the second canto advises us. It says, whether we are full of material desires, sarvakama, or free from material desires, akama, we should approach the Supreme Lord. So it's not that the Bhagavatam's not saying, well, wait till you become purified like this, then you can worship Krishna. In the second canto, the verse is, akama sarvakama va, moksha kama udaradi, tivrena bhakti yogena, yajita purusham param. A person who has broader intelligence, whether he be full of material desire, without any material desire, or desiring liberation, must by all means worship the Supreme Whole, the personality of Godhead. The first line of that verse, akama sarvakama va. Akama is word for word, Prabhupada translates, one who has transcended all material desires, akama. And sarvakama, this is wonderful, one who has the sum total of all material desires. So I don't think we're even on that platform, we're above that platform. I don't think anyone here could say, well, I actually, well, maybe myself, I have this sum total of all material desires. And then the last word is va. Either way, wherever you're situated, worship the Supreme Lord. So we all fit in there. We all have material desires. We wouldn't be here in the material world in the first place. So the Bhagavatam's advising us, wherever we are on the spiritual path, wherever you are along that path, we're all on some different point along that path, we should approach Krishna. So this verse means everyone is being encouraged. Come and worship the Supreme Lord. I was thinking in the early days of Prabhupada preaching in New York, his first disciples just came to him from material sort of backgrounds. They weren't great saints. But Prabhupada, in fact, I remember reading, they would be listening to Bhagavatam class or Bhagavad Gita class, and at the end of class they'd have to run out for a ciggy. They hadn't even given enough cigarettes yet. But Prabhupada wasn't focusing on that. He was focusing on giving them transcendental knowledge, letting them hear, which is our process. He didn't focus on the attachments they might have had, but he engaged them. Most of us approach the spiritual master, I think, with lots of mature desires, either gross or subtle. Some attachments, like when we first come across devotional life, can be dealt with very quickly. Like, for example, most people here probably weren't even meat eaters when they first approached devotees, but some were. Some like attachment like that, like meat eating can be, it can go away very fast. Like, overnight you can become a vegetarian, that's it. But some desires, like those coming from our false ego, that can take a while, isn't it? That sort of desires like wanting recognition, things like that. That's not so easy. They're very subtle desires. So our path of becoming Krishna Bhaktas, we're all on that path. And the path can sort of go faster and slower along the path. Some parts can happen really quickly, as we're saying, that false ego and things like that can slow right down. In the beginning it's described, we have to have a little bit of shraddha, faith, to approach the devotees, to see, there's something nice here. So it doesn't take much shraddha in that beginning stage. Even like out on Harinam, people are chanting down the street. Somebody walks out of the pub and goes, Hare Krishna or something like that, or dances with the devotees. So that's the beginning faith. So then, after that, if somebody thinks there's something worthwhile here, then they want to associate with devotees a little bit, called sadhu sangha. And I was reading just the other day, it's described, that which cannot be achieved in thousands of lifetimes can be achieved just in a moment with the right association. So sadhu sangha is so important. So Prabhupada has described that we're all on what's called the clearing stage, what he called the clearing stage, called anatta nivriti. Sometimes this stage can seem a little like you're going uphill maybe. I heard the senior devotee, one of our great philosophers described, he said, when we see our anattas, as you become a little more along the path a bit, we become very aware of those anattas within our heart. He says, when we see those anattas, he said, it's appalling. When I see the amount of anattas within my heart, it's absolutely appalling. Srila Prabhupada described that in the clearing stage, we practice our sadhana, and our attitude is that we want to get rid of these unwanted desires. Remember, in the beginning, it's not an offense to start the process with material desires. It becomes an offense when we go out of our way to maintain them. Like, I've got this attachment, but I'm not going to give it up. I'll chant Hare Krishna maybe, but I'm not giving this one. Hey. Which one of the offences is that one? The 10th one. To maintain material attachments despite chanting the holy names. So we should be chanting in that attitude that I want to get rid of these unwanted desires. And we shouldn't think that it's impossible, because it's not really up to our great qualities that we can get rid of them. It's described that Krishna can destroy these anattas. So there's a few verses in the Bhagavatam and the Gita where it describes how Krishna intervenes or reciprocates with us to help get rid of these anarthas. Bhagavatam 4th canto, 30th chapter, 35 verse. Whenever pure topics of the transcendental world are discussed, the members of the audience forget all kinds of material hankerings, at least for the time being. And not only that, they are no longer envious of one another, nor do they suffer from anxiety or fear. Isn't that far out? While we're sitting in class, we've all experienced it when someone's giving a really nice class, from my Swami, someone like that. You hear an exalted class and we become transported. We're no longer feeling any anxieties of the material world. We're not feeling envious or jealous of anyone else's situation. We're completely satisfied during class, at least. In the purport to that verse, Srila Prabhupada quotes, from what I could figure out, it's from the Padma Purana. Krishna says, "My dear Narad, actually I do not reside in my abode, Vaikuntha, nor do I reside in the hearts of the yogis, but I reside in that place where my pure devotees chant my holy name and discuss my form, pastimes and qualities." Isn't that wonderful? While we're sitting together chanting the glories of the Bhagavatam, going over Krishna's pastimes, Krishna is actually here with us. Prabhupada goes on, because of the presence of the Lord in the form of the transcendental vibration, the Vaikuntha atmosphere is evoked. This atmosphere is without fear and anxiety. One living entity does not fear another. Remembering in the material world, we are always subject to various fears and anxieties, isn't it? It's our lot in the material world. But while we're listening to the transcendental pastimes of the Lord, it goes away. In the Bhagavad Gita 10:10, the famous verse, Tesham satatam yuktanam, to those who are constantly devoted and worship me with love, I give them the understanding by which they can come to me. That's a pretty good guarantee. And then in the next verse, 10:11, to show them special mercy, I, dwelling in their hearts, destroy with the shining lamp of knowledge that darkness born of ignorance. So from within our heart, Krishna promises to come and destroy whatever misgivings, whatever ignorance we still have. That's the process. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, it's described in the first canto, Sri Krishna, who is the Paramatma in everyone's heart and the benefactor of the truthful devotee, cleanses desire for material enjoyment from the heart of the devotee who has developed the urge to hear his messages. He cleanses that desire we have for material enjoyment from within our heart. In the purport, Prabhupada says, messages of the personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, are non-different from him. The messages from Krishna are non-different from Krishna. So whenever offenceless chanting and glorification of God are undertaken, it is to be understood that Krishna is present there in the form of transcendental sound, which is as powerful as the Lord personally. Prabhupada says about chanting, which is our central process here with our beads. He says, there is no rigid fixture of time, and anyone can chant the holy name with attention and reverence. So I was thinking they're the two qualities that Prabhupada's telling us we need to develop when we're chanting. And I'm not chanting, while I'm doing the shopping or while I'm doing something else, but I'm chanting with attention and reverence. The Lord is so kind to us that he can be present before us personally in the form of transcendental sound. But unfortunately, I experienced this. I don't have taste for hearing and chanting the Lord's name and activities. So part of our process, this process of sadhana that we're all on, following the rules and regulations, is to develop that taste. And I think the proof of the pudding, as it said, is that any devotee who's been around for a while will tell you, yeah, that taste comes. By following the rules and regulations, by just prosecuting our daily sadhana, that taste develops. It says it comes bit by bit when we offer service to the pure devotee of the Lord. When Prabhupada was present, he used to say, imagine it, he'd started a worldwide movement, but his consciousness was, I am offering service to the preaching mission of my Guru Maharaj. So we in turn, we're all offering service in the same mood to Prabhupada or to his sincere servants, the parampara. Prabhupada restates what Krishna said earlier, what I quoted from the Gita or the Bhagavatam. Prabhupada says, so the Lord reciprocates with his devotees. It's not a one-way street. Krishna sees when we make some little effort and he reciprocates. When he sees a devotee is completely sincere in desiring admittance to the transcendental service of the Lord, becomes eager to hear about him, the Lord acts from within the devotee in such a way that the devotee can easily approach him, may easily go back to him. It's described, we've heard it before, Krishna is more anxious to take us back than we can desire. Unfortunately for many of us, the desire to go back to Godhead, it's like one desire in a shopping bag of desires. We got quite a few. But as we practice longer, as we chant more attentively, then that desire to achieve Krishna just gets stronger. And the chanting becomes more attractive. Prabhupada says, only a very few want to go back to Godhead, but anyone who desires to go back to Godhead, Krishna will help in all respects. When we chant each morning in the Shikshastakam, in these transcendental names you have invested all your transcendental energies. Out of kindness you enable us to easily approach you by your holy names. I am so unfortunate, I have no attraction for them. Why don't I have attraction for them? Because of my material attachments. Therefore, that's it. I have no taste because those material attachments are in the way. In the third canto of Bhagavatam, there's a verse. Every learned person knows very well that attachment for the material is the greatest entanglement for the spirit soul. But that same attachment, when we apply it to something transcendentally, the service to the other devotees, service to the mission of the pure devotees, service to the Supreme Lord, then that attachment can be liberating. Prabhupada says, attachment cannot be killed. It simply has to be transferred. Attachment for material things is called material consciousness. Attachment for spiritual things, or his devotee, is called Krishna consciousness. Consciousness is therefore, it's the platform where the attachment exists. I remember there was an old illustration in the Bhagavad Gita. Remember the stairs going up and the stairs going down? I don't know if it's in the new Bhagavad Gita or not, but the stairs going up, like the devotees going up, and Krishna's at the top of the stairs with Radharani, and we're going towards that. That's our goal. And then there's stairs going down, and it gets pretty dark and murky down there. Not very attractive. And the middle step, the middle step where it's going either up or down, is labelled attachment. So where our attachments lie is either going to be pulling us down or lifting us up. Prabhupada reminds us, desirelessness, it's not our goal, and it's not even possible. I've heard, like maybe some forms of Buddhism, some other paths, talk about desirelessness. But Prabhupada says, for the living entity, desirelessness is not possible. The living entity, by constitution, has a propensity to be attached to something. If you want to show affection, it's in our nature. We're not stones. We look for affection and we want to show affection. We see so many people later in life, especially like the kids have grown up and moved away. So then they get a dog or a cat. Like on the way here, I was driving to the temple, there's some old lady taking her little dog for a walk. She probably does it every morning. To fulfill that desire for affection and to show attachment, we get a bird or a dog or a cat, whatever. And just to help you out, I decided to Google, every year in Australia, you won't believe what people spend on pets. $33 billion we spend every year on our pets, keeping them fed, healthy, groomed, and accessorised. Over half that amount is going to pet food and vet bills. $33 billion, because we want to show affection. So we need some little pet or budgie or something or other to show our affection, our propensity to love. So the verse today was sort of pointing out that as human beings, Prabhupada used to really emphasize this, I remember clearly. He used to look at us sort of straight in the eyes and he would say, as a human being, we have special responsibility. You know, that out of all the births we could have taken, somehow or other we're in this human form. And that it's very special. As far as we can tell, no other creature can ask these questions that we're talking about. And it goes quicker than we imagine. Suddenly one day you wake up and you're in your 70s. It's like, it just goes like that. When I talk to visitors here, like often when people come from the outside, most people when you talk to them, they'll agree that, well, I know I'm not really this stuff. They sort of agree with that. They can tell I'm not just skin and bones. And then even if you sort of go a little more with them, they'll even sort of grant you that, yeah, I'm probably not the mind either. That the mind's just coming and going, flickering, isn't it? What my mind was thinking about yesterday is not the same as what I'm thinking now. And what I was thinking when I was a kid is a universe away from what I'm thinking now. So we're not the mind either. So this question of, well, who are we? But unfortunately, most people are just not all that interested. When it comes down to it, they're distracted. I think it's Keshava Maharaj likes to use that phrase, weapons of mass distraction. Talking of, mobile phones and social media and what have you. Weapons of mass distraction. We're just totally distracted from that question of, well, who are we? Where is my real identity? So you can actually spend a whole lifetime just trying to satisfy the senses. Like every morning at Prasad, we sing that song, Sarirada Vijajal. I don't know whether any of the new devotees know the translation, but basically it sort of says that I can spend an entire lifetime simply trying to satisfy the senses. And of all the senses, the tongue is the most voracious. But at the end of life, after spending a lifetime trying to satisfy the senses, it's like described, well, if you've been a sincere servant, then surely the master will be satisfied. No. After a lifetime of just trying to satisfy the senses, they're still not satisfied. So the mass of people never really consider what is it that distinguishes us from animals. I was thinking, you could say, well, we know we're different. They don't have TVs, they don't have electric cars, animals don't go on cruise ships. So we know there are differences, but what is the essence? And that is that we have that ability to be introspective, to inquire, who am I? Prabhupada describes this material hankering is a kind of a disease. We can feel it within our heart. I want something material, something external, and it's never satisfied. People are hankering more and more and more and more. And he said that means the temperature is rising. That eventually you become materially frustrated. Actually, I heard, maybe a song back in the day, people live lives of quiet desperation. They're not really getting satisfied, but hey, no one else is either, so you just keep plodding along. Because that desire within us can never be satisfied materially. It just increases. I think we've all tried it again and again. It just doesn't work. We started off talking about karma. Remember, akarma, or sarva-karma or akarma, the desire for one's own satisfaction. That tendency is exhibited in the material world, whereas the spirit of akarma is fully exhibited in the spiritual world. The gopis are described. They loved Krishna without any desire for something in return. They were just offering love. It wasn't a contract. If you do this, I'll do that. They're offering love. Prabhupada used to sort of mention that in the material world, the closest thing we sort of have really to love is probably a mother's love for a baby, a child. Even when it's not in her interest, she'll show love and affection for that child, even when it's not returned. When the kids turn out to be teenagers, what you get is a serve from them. The mother's love is the closest thing. But with good association, we can see that this desire to try and satisfy my senses independently is a fruitless endeavour. It doesn't work. There's that old definition of insanity. You probably all heard it. If we keep doing the same thing again and again, but we want a different result, it's described as like a form of madness. Can't keep doing it like trying to chew the tube again and again and hope that this time it might work. So there are two ways by which we learn, and we've all heard of those. Anyone know the two ways of learning? That's one way to do it. The best way is simply by hearing. Someone who's really intelligent, they hear something, yeah, that makes sense. I won't go down that path. Second way of learning, the second class way, is by doing it, by practicing it. And there's even a third class, that you do it and you still don't learn. You do it again and again. The word is mudha. I'm experiencing the suffering that comes with that activity, but I'm not learning. So the Bhagavatam, it's like our transcendental eye, Shastra Chakshas. That when we look at things with our mind and senses, I may see it as like it or I don't like it, but we know that that's flickering. In the Bhagavad Gita, 15th chapter, verse 8, it says, the living entity carries his different conceptions of life from one body to another, just like the air carries aromas. Thus, because of those different conceptions, he takes one kind of body and again quits it to take another. So just like the air carries aromas, then all the living entities have got their different conceptions of what life is about. But sometimes you meet someone, when you talk to someone at the feast or at breakfast, wherever, here, some people have got such a very strong conception. Oh, this is what life's about. It's hard to get through. It's hard to penetrate. We can become like locked into what our mind thinks at the moment. Prabhupada says this idea of the air carrying aromas. He says we can't perceive it physically. It's invisible. So how would we know how that smell is being carried around? We can hear from someone who can explain it. Maybe when we were kids, you heard the air moving, whatever. So we hear. And unfortunately, Padma was describing the other day in class that material science, almost all material science at the moment, only looks at things if I can see it, if it can be measured under a microscope. If I can't see it or measure it, I refuse to acknowledge its existence. But of course, even scientists, they admit the reality of kindness, affection, the sorts of subtle qualities that we all know are part of our life, desire. None of those things can be measured. Prabhupada says, when it comes down to this, if only if I can see something, then I'll accept it. He says, no, he says, it's not that you, he says, no, you don't just believe. He says, here is a fact that there is something within the body that is spreading consciousness. Believe or not believe, it's there, isn't it? We know that there's something within the body that makes us conscious. Alalanath filled me in the other day. There's this term called Shmarshana Vairagya. Anyone heard that before? Ramai would. Shmarshana Vairagya. It's the renunciation that people feel at the burning gap. Or sometimes described that at a funeral, everybody feels a bit spiritual. Because you can see that there is my dear mother who's no longer present, or my father. There's this dead body. But that person who I loved, who spent years bringing me up, they're not there anymore. But there's this lump of matter still there. So it sort of like really stops you in your tracks, isn't it? When we see that. Of course, in our culture, death is sort of hidden behind as many screens as we can manage. In India, it's sort of right out in the open. I remember visiting Mayapur many years ago, and across on the other side of the river, there were two people sitting down. They had a little fire going, and they were singing some prayers, and they had a little form of a body, like must have been a baby, wrapped up in cloth. And they were doing the funeral rites for that little baby. It's right out there in the open. So our mind has been accepted to accept certain things as favourable. That I like this sort of thing, I like that colour, I dislike that. I like the taste of that, I dislike that. But it's described in the Gita that we have to be careful of listening to the mind too much. Because it said, that which in the beginning, according to my mind's, yes, it's good today, it seems like, might seem unattractive at the beginning, but it can become like nectar. And also, the other thing can happen. It seems, just seems so attractive right now, but down the track a little bit, it becomes like poison. So this is the sort of mental stage, attraction and rejection. But those things that can seem so attractive can end up becoming completely fruitless. But to take on those things like the Gita's giving us, that seem like poison at the beginning, but becomes like nectar, and which awakens one to self-realization. It's said to be happiness in the mode of goodness. So the instructions in the Bhagavatam are sort of like a compass bearing, or like a lighthouse. The material world, material life brings with it a constant stream of disturbances. The material platform is just like big waves. Probably use that example of, even if you're an Olympic swimmer, if you get tossed in the ocean, and the waves are, 10 feet, all you can do is struggle to stay alive. It's distress from beginning to end. So the material world's a bit like that. Right now it could be nice and peaceful, but we know that distress will be around the corner. And after that will become happiness again. So we have to sort of learn to tolerate. It's described that when we do take shelter of Krishna, three things occur simultaneously. Devotion, a direct experience of some relationship with the Lord, and detachment from other things. These three things just occur automatically for someone who takes shelter of the Supreme Personality. It's described, the analogy is used in the same way that pleasure and nourishment and relief from hunger come simultaneously, and they increase with each bite for somebody who's engaged in eating. Pleasure, relief from hunger, and nourishment. Those things just come automatically. So as we serve Krishna, detachment for the material world just comes about naturally. It's not something that we try for independently. That detachment just comes from our attachment to serving the Guru, Shastra and Sadhu. Jiva Goswami, he sort of uses that analogy of eating. He says, bhakti or devotion can be compared to tushti or satisfaction because they both take the form of pleasure. Parishanubhava, the experience of the Supreme Lord, and pushti, nourishment, are analogous because both of them sustain life. And finally, virakti or detachment and shuddhapaya, the cessation of hunger, can be compared because both free one from further hankering so that one may experience shanti or peace. So bhakti or devotion can be compared to tushti or satisfaction, because by practicing this process of bhakti, we will experience pleasure. Just as a person who's eating becomes uninterested in other activities while he's eating, and eventually becomes uninterested even in the food itself as the satisfaction increases, so it's described our experience of the material world as we practice this yogic process of bhakti. We become naturally detached from that. The difference being that in the material world there's this thing called the law of diminishing returns. That I did something today and it felt good, but if I do it again tomorrow, the same thing, it won't give me the same satisfaction. You have to do more and more to try and get that satisfaction again. But bhakti is always increasing. That as we chant and hear that satisfaction, that experience of pleasure we get from that process is increasing. It's described because it's not material. One never becomes satiated by relishing the bliss of the Supreme Lord. So, as I was saying earlier, certain things we can give up quickly, and certain things take longer. Like I was thinking of that quality of time wasting. It's hard, to live your life sort of moment by moment, fully engaged and serving and not wasting any moment. Like there's a story of Bhakti Vinod Thakur that he used to have a big pocket watch, big pocket watch. And that more or less he lived his life following that watch day after day after day. There's an amazing schedule that describes what he would do in his day. And moment by moment, it was all planned out. 8 to 10 p.m. he would take rest for 2 hours. 10 p.m. he would get up and write till 4 in the morning. 4 o'clock to 4:30, have half an hour's rest. 4:30 to 7, chant japa. Then allow 30 minutes for correspondence. 7:30 to 9:30, study the Shastra. 9:30 to 10, 30 minutes, have half a litre of milk and 2 chapatis. 10 o'clock to 1 o'clock, go to the court because you're a magistrate. There's 3 hours there. Then from 1 p.m. to 2 p.m, get refreshed at home. 2 p.m. to 5 p.m, another 3 hours back at the court. From 5 o'clock to 7, translate Sanskrit Shastras into Bengali. From 7 to 8, take bath and have prasad. Imagine doing that so intently day after day. I came across a phrase the other day I hadn't come across before called sadindriya. Sadindriya. It means when the senses are continually engaged in the service of the Lord. Whatever I see in the world, whatever I'm thinking about, how to use that, I see everything in terms of how I can use it in Krishna's service. Okay. Does anyone have anything they'd like to offer? Any complaints where I've gone off track? I was thinking, just to conclude then, wherever we are on the path, the process that we undergo involves immersing ourselves in some sort of service. And from that service we get that higher taste, param drishta. And it's that higher taste, serving, hearing, chanting, that gradually our attraction to lower tastes diminishes. Prabhupada used to use the example of like a balance beam. When I was a kid in the shops, they used to have these weighing things. It'd be like a bowl on one side and a bowl on the other side. And you'd stick your bananas in one side and you'd put some weights in the other until they balanced out. So they'd know that you've got, 0.7 of a kilo or whatever it was back then. So Prabhupada says, we can understand where we are spiritually. He says that we can see, according to my attraction still for material things. And he says, as the attraction for material things goes up, spiritual life goes down. As the attraction for spiritual life goes up, the attraction for the material things just goes down automatically. There's no way one can go up without the other going down. Sometimes we meet people, here that have sort of certain philosophies where they're trying to sort of advocate, well, you can do this and this and this, and it can, while I'm also doing something spiritual. Prabhupada was really demanding on that. As our spiritual life goes up, material life goes down. And if our spiritual life goes down, and material life goes... Sorry, you get the idea. I was also thinking about today's verse, which seems really strict. Don't even think of having a child unless you can make them a pure devotee. Prabhupada, dealing with people was very practical. But I was thinking, if he had put anything less than the highest standard in the Bhagavatam, then we would have taken that as the standard and then gone down from that a bit. So he only ever put the highest standard forward. And it's up to us to keep trying to keep that standard in mind. I was thinking it's a bit like when you go to the doctors. Let's say you might have some cancer somewhere in your body. The doctor doesn't say to you, well, look, we've got rid of some of it. That's pretty good. We'll just forget it, The doctor's going to say, no, we have to get rid of all of it. Otherwise, it's going to come back and infect you. So that was that's the platform of the spiritual master. He wants to root out wherever that material attachment is for our own good. Because that's what's standing in our way of experiencing spiritual emotions and so on. Thank you so much, Bruce. Hare Krishna.